Hello everyone, and welcome to Mr. Here is South America, and this hefty chunk of it is Argentina. Now let's have a look-see, shall we? Historians tell us humans have lived in Argentina since Paleolithic times, or for many thousands of years. And back in those shadowy, unknowable days, people there painted silhouettes of their hands on cave walls by blowing pigments through pipes for some reason. Anyway, Argentina was never home to mighty empires like Peru, but rather various smallish separate tribes, some agrarian like the Huarpe, others hunter-gatherers like the Toba, and some with serious irrigation skills like the Diaguita. And so they lived and fought other tribes and themselves until, boom, here come the Spaniards. Initial Spanish exploration of the region from the sea occurred in the early 1500s. Early attempts at settling failed horribly via food shortages and attacks from natives. Italian explorer Sebastian Cabot reported the presence of silver there, and Argentina gets its name from the Latin word for silver. But it was largely concerns over Portugal's taking of Brazil that spurred Spanish conquest in Argentina. The 16th century was very busy with conquistadors like Diego de Almagro, exploring and fighting and building settlements. Buenos Aires was properly established in 1580, and Spain introduced sheep and cows and horses to roam and flourish in the pampas, and with a lot of native manpower got the land up and running. Argentina was not immediately a colonial nation with an identity of its own, but instead became part of the Spanish Empire's massive province, the Viceroyalty of Peru, which was this big at its height. Times changed, as they always seem to do, and as the Peruvian mines declined, economics and so on altered, evidenced by Spain splitting the Viceroyalty and forming another one, the Viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata, after the Plata River. Buenos Aires became more and more prominent, and ideas from Europe's Enlightenment, good and bad, began to influence people there. Then, without his government's permission, a British admiral attacked Buenos Aires, kindling a conflict that saw the Argentine people emerge victorious. Revolutionary zeal swept over the region, and when Napoleon defeated the mother country Spain, cries for independence echoed all across South America. Rising to the task was the masterful general José de San Martín, who liberated enormous portions of South America from Spanish rule. Independence was declared in 1816, but the political turbulence was far from over. After a war with Brazil, some order was restored by dictator Juan Manuel de Rosas. His terror-filled regime was eventually ousted by Justo José de Urquiza, who became the first president of the Argentine Republic. Then Paraguay invaded, and Argentina and its allies won. Then a vast area of Patagonia was conquered in the conquest of the desert, resulting in a massive addition of land for cattle grazing and farming. Argentina's economy subsequently boomed. By the early 20th century, Argentina was among the richest countries in the world. Millions of Europeans moved there. Then the Great Depression rocked the world, and Argentina entered a time called the infamous decade, an era of scandalous political corruption, coups, and monetary mismanagement. Then General Juan Perón came to power, a populist with immense support from the struggling farmers and industrial workers. A Catholic and a nationalist, he also championed and pushed numerous socialist causes, and his famous wife, former actress Eva, or Evita Perón, became the icon of social justice in Argentina. She was totally adored by the common people, whom she manipulated with consummate skill. Concerns arose after Perón produced a new constitution that basically allowed him to keep himself in power, and to put those disrespectful of the government in prison. As his first 5-year plan to jumpstart the economy faltered, he tried another, which did nothing to lessen the 200% rise in the cost of living since 1948. In 1955, after a bloody rebellion, he resigned. This fellow took over for less than 2 months, as he was overthrown by this fellow. Elections later saw this chap in charge, who briefly brought some relief by taking out enormous loans. But he was unpopular, so he was succeeded by him, who was followed by him, who did his best but was kicked out by him, who was later kicked out by him, who was later kicked out by him, who lost the next election to a dentist, who quickly resigned to make room for Juan Perón again. Perón lived only a few months, and his third wife, Isabel, became president after him. She was a disaster. Cost of living went up by 335%, and strikes and demonstrations increased. And once again, the military took over. Jorge Videla became dictator, and in the context of the so-called Dirty War, made untold numbers of students and political opponents disappear, and not in the fun magician way either. He was succeeded by this guy, who was kicked out by this guy, who decided to take over the British-held Falkland Islands. In 10 weeks, the British military defeated Argentina and recaptured the islands, leaving the humiliated Argentine leader predictably removed from office. The economy finally began to heal in the early 1990s. Then the troubles returned. Then things became more stable under Nestor Kirchner, who was succeeded by his wife Cristina Fernandez, who ended up being indicted for corruption. Mauricio Macri won the next elections, and let's hope for better things for Argentina in the future. Despite centuries of social and political conflict, this country still managed to give the world tango and Nobel Prize-winning scientists and brilliant writers and sports people, and attain a very high human development rank. What do you think the future holds for Argentina? Comment below, but for now, bye-bye!